Yo, 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 welcome to another edition of the Geeky Bros Podcast. I'm your boy Tactix.
Yo, it's just Darcy here.
This is Geeky Umar. How y'all doing today?
So good. So excited.
I'm
Oh,
excited for
today
this
is a
one,
good day.
man.
Yeah.
I'm super hype. Super hype.
Yeah.
Now, all of our episodes are awesome, but let's just say that this one hits close to home for all three of us.
Yes.
Absolutely, man.
Powerpuff
So-
Girls.
Exactly.
I just couldn't help myself. I'm all wearing a Batman shirt.
Okay, so audience, we released a spoiler-free 7-minute video review of The Batman last Saturday, just after all three of us watched it. We've given everybody a week. So this time, spoiler warning, we're going to review The Batman. No holds bar. We're going to say everything that we think, and we're going to just review the shit out of this. And then afterwards, we're going to do a hypothetical. We're going to answer hypothetical questions that Tactix have set for us. So, in case you're watching this after the fact and you don't want to hear the spoilers and just want to hear about the answers that we give, just click on the timestamps below. They'll be provided, and you'll be able to see what our answers are to Tactix' question. So now we are going to start what we've all been waiting for, what you're all here for, the review of The Batman. We have been talking about this for years. We've been waiting for this for years. It has finally come out. We're finally going to talk about it. And so it is with great pleasure I go to Darcy and say, Darcy, what did you think of the Batman?
Yo, I absolutely love this film. I straight just love this film. All right, let me get to the thing everyone needs to know. Your numbers, what is my rating? I've contemplated, sat on this all week. And my numbers is a firm 9 out of 10 for me. That's where I sit with this. This is a strong movie for me. I'm wanting to go back to the theater. I'm debating if I can bring my partner's niece and nephew, 10 and 14. Probably not.
There was like an 8-year-old kid in our theater. When we
Yeah,
I know. Well, she's seen it, so she can make the judgment call. I'm just looking for excuses. Is pretty much what I'm telling you right now. First off, out of the gate, okay. One of the things that I have a couple notes here. One of the things there has been some comparison with this film, okay, and I'm gonna make my statement about this. This is something I've been holding all week. Everyone is like my partner even said to me, she was watching it and she was like, it was really, really good. Felt like it was missing a little something. And then I was asking her questions about The Dark Knight, and she was like, yeah, just a little bit of this, a little bit of that. A lot of people making comparisons to this, but I think that this comparison is it says a big statement about this film, okay? Because technically, this is the equivalent of Batman Begins, technically. Yet, it is being compared to The Dark Knight, which means it's probably the best DC movie we've had since The Dark Knight. If you're comparing it to the best film that's come out, in the DC universe, that has been a staple for so long, and then you're gonna be like, Dark Knight, that. It's you're comparing it to the perfect film, and it's really close. I mean, come on, just that costume alone. I love the new costume. It's really, really grown on me. And one thing also, I'm gonna say, since we're looking at the costumes right now, and I just whatnot, I was right about it. I was so right about his chest plate. I'm so happy about that. Those are just 2 blades. I said it early on. We saw the first picture that they're just 2 blades he could pull off any time. And there was one scene where he was going into the crime scene that was all plastered up, and he just took the blade. He had cut the thing and then put the blade back in his chest. And I was like, yes, that's just such a smart utility. So overall, this movie for me felt a lot like The Dark Knight in the sense that it had that roller coaster aspect, but it had so many other things going on for it. One of the things that I've been saying I really need to see in a Batman film, I have not seen since 1989, is a really good depiction of the world that Batman is in. So you can actually feel the world so that like it tells not just the story, not just the believability of why he's there and the villainy, but it just helps set an ominous presence. I can't say it. Presence. And right out of the very beginning, at the very beginning of this movie, you have that scene where they put up the bat signal. And all of the villains, or not the villains, like just like the general people, the criminals on, I can't get the words. General criminals on the street are afraid of the shadows, and you even feel afraid of the shadows. That like, is he there? Is he back there? Like, you have a guy who robs a store and then runs out into the middle of the street and into the helicopter light because he feels safer with the police copters light than the Batman potentially in the shadows, and the beating that you will get from that. Film had great action for me. Film had great writing for me. All the actors brought it. It was 3 hours, and I was just enjoying every minute. I wasn't thinking about the time. It had many moments that could have been climaxes, and yet it kept delivering more. I think it did a great job of setting things up. I'm looking forward to seeing his Bruce Wayne in the next film. A lot of people are like, well, he's very emo. It's very different. And a lot of people I've heard that from didn't realize it's year 2 and he isn't supposed to be a full-fledged version of what we know. And he's realizing in this time frame that he has to become more. The movie's beautiful. For me, like, this is the best thing since The Dark Knight. And I mean that as a compliment, not as it didn't meet the mark. I just love this film. I want to see it again. I just want to see it again.
Okay, so I do have 2 questions then. Like, would you say that with all the hype we were anticipating for this film, did this film actually meet those for you?
Yeah, I think it met them. There were maybe some things that you build up in your head that are a little different, and the movie's a little different in some ways, but it gave me things that I wasn't like really anticipating. Like, for instance, this movie played so much paid homage to so many different properties that even if I'm not like in-depthly knowledgeable about them, I recognize them. Like, for instance, the scene where the Riddler is like unmasked and he's sitting in that coffee shop, right? And it's like lit with like the blue neon lights. That looks like a straight cut from the Arkham Knight games or Arkham City games, one of the two, where Scarecrow takes over the entire city. I think it's the Arkham City game. And the city looks like a little bit of 1989, looks like the video games, looks like the Nolan series, all kind of wrapped up into one. There's so many layers of things that I wasn't hyping myself for that it also gave me on top. And it just, for me, it delivered. Like, for any little gripe you have, I don't care. Give me 90% of what I want. I'm happy. This is a phenomenal film. After a few more watches, I might put this down as a straight masterpiece.
And so, following up, what makes this different for you than The Dark Knight? Because you made a lot of comparisons. You've been saying other people have been making a lot of comparisons. How does this differentiate?
As much as they're both like grounded films, I felt like the Nolan series, and it's also like it's partly the cinematography, the world that they paint, but that the Nolan series felt like it was 100% in our real world, right? Like it, like very, very plausibly. Whereas this one feels more gothic and feels more like it's all grounded in reality. It's just not our reality. And it's a city that's like gone, like it feels like the Gotham it's supposed to be versus very more comic accurate. Whereas the other one felt more like pulling these characters out of the comics and imagining completely in our world. It's just more like this is in the comic, but in a grounded and realistic way that's more believable and doesn't end up feeling hokey or like the elements of Zack Snyder stuff that doesn't feel good. Like there's moments that feel good in what he does, but there's stuff where you're like, It looks like a really dope guy standing in front of a CGI screen, like a blue screen. And I know he's standing in front of a blue screen. I can feel it, and it takes me out of the scene a bit, you know? Whereas
Yeah.
this is like, no, this all feels very like plausible. And I just pulled in. And I love the neo-noir aspect to this, the detective, old like crime detective aspect to this. It's very fitting, and it's what makes it unique. It makes it feel fresh, makes it feel not like anything else, and it makes it feel like it's right for like paying the right homage to what Batman is.
Dope. Okay. Tactics, any questions before we come to you?
No, I liked his interpretation and his opinion. I kind of agree with him.
Okay, well then, Tactics, what is your review? Full on.
So yeah, to start things off, I agree with you, Darcy. I think that comparing this to The Dark Knight is a very unfair comparison, because when we look at the two films, right? The Dark Knight isn't a Batman film; it's a Joker film, right? We got the Batman film in Batman Begins, right? And now if you look at Joker, it's actually a Joker film and then semi a Two-Face film, and Batman is the supporting character, right?
Facts.
And so it's better. I agree that it's better to compare this to Batman Begins, because Batman Begins feels more like a Batman story, because it's an origin story of how he becomes Batman. This, not so much how he becomes Batman, but he's on his way to becoming the Batman that we know and love. And so I think that's a better Batman Begins, and this is a better comparison than that of The Dark Knight. Now, in regards to my rating right out the gate, I gave it, I think I gave it a 8.5 in my initial reaction. As it stands right now, I think I'm going to stay with that rating. And don't get me wrong, I really, really, really enjoyed this film. I will say that it met my expectations. It didn't surpass my expectations like The Dark Knight. But again, it's not a fair comparison, because The Dark Knight just was like, it's like a league in its own, right? So, but that being said, my expectations were pretty high for this film. So the fact that they were met, I was satisfied. They delivered on what I was expecting, and I can't really ask for much more than that, especially for a first of its franchise. So I was happy. I left only having one gripe with the film, really. And I'll get to that, but I'll kind of go over some of the pros of the movie. So pro number one is the less than more aspect that they often utilized with especially with Batman, where like there were moments where he didn't have to say anything and his face just telegraphed the story beautifully, or like whatever it was that he was trying to convey. Like you didn't have to have so much dialogue to really understand what was going on in that scene. And a prime example of that is the whole vengeance line at the end, right? Where it was like, he was throughout the movie, he was referring to himself as Vengeance. And then when he goes and he fights the Riddler gang or whatever, and then they unmasked the last Riddler guy, and I think it's Gordon who asks the guy, like, who are you? And then the guy responds, I'm Vengeance. And then Batman gives this look as in like, oh shit, I've been going about this whole vigilante thing all wrong. Like I have to be more than just vengeance. I have to be a beacon of hope for the city of Gotham. And then that's when he gets into that whole, he swings over to that the electric line, he cuts the line or whatever, he falls into the water, and then he emerges as if he's getting reborn. And that right there was like poetic to me, because it was like, oh, okay, so this is now Batman Begins, essentially. Like he's now becoming the Batman that we're waiting for, right? And so everyone like complaining about how Robert Pattinson didn't portray Bruce Wayne, and there was no dichotomy. Initially, going into this movie and watching the movie, I was like, okay, I can understand that because this is the beginning of the franchise, that there maybe isn't going to be a dichotomy between Batman and Bruce Wayne yet, because he's just focusing on the vengeance aspect of Batman, and there is no separation yet until he realizes, okay, I have to first become a beacon of hope, and also I have to start learning how to do more outside of the costume. Even though the costume is representing who he is truly, he knows that he also has to do the work as Bruce Wayne as well. So I really like that. Although I did come across a TikTok video of Pattinson talking about how he purposely refused to express the dichotomy between Batman and Bruce Wayne. So if that's true and he's not bullshitting us, then that becomes a big con for me, because part of the Batman character is that there is a distinction between the two characters. So that I don't like. The Bat Tech, I'll run through these really quickly. So the Bat Tech,
Yeah, take your time.
I love the contact lenses aspect. It reminds me of I'm big into the Arkham games, and it reminds me of detective mode. And so I just love that aspect. It was very unique and very cool to see that. I just wish we would have seen where or how he created that tech. It would have been nice to kind of see a little bit of that. It wasn't needed, but it would have just been nice to kind of get a little bit of a backstory on what that was all about.
That could go into like what you were saying, like things kind of like, because like he showed Matt Reeves showed like the garage that like he built. He probably built the Batmobile together. Like the computer he clearly set up himself. We can assume that he did it with the contacts.
Yeah, all of that is implied. So I mean, like it's not a big deal for me. It's not a deal breaker for me at all. But yeah, the fight scenes, honestly, like if we're comparing Batman Begins to this, this wins by a landslide. But like the fight scenes, I was super impressed by it. Like I still say Ben Affleck's warehouse fight scene is still the best Batman fight scene that we've gotten on screen in a live action rendition, but
minus the killing.
But I mean, in every what live action Batman movie has he not killed someone outside of the Joel Schumacher ones?
This one,
actually, no. In Joel Schumacher, he pretty much killed Two-Face, so that counts.
I mean, he killed our hopes. So
no, but wait, hold on. You tell me that car chase scene, everyone walked out unscathed. Someone must have died in that.
But that was Penguin, though. That wasn't Batman.
I mean,
Penguin did it all, and like Bruce was the one who didn't hit anybody. He just like went around people.
Okay, fair.
But like they didn't let Penguin go right afterwards. I'm like, that was one thing. Like Jimmy, like my friend Jimmy was bringing up. He's like, so Penguin causes a multi-vehicle explosion across a highway. Just gonna leave him tied up, walking like a penguin outside of warehouse. I was like,
yeah, actually, that's true. That's very true. Very good point. But I do love that chase scene. That chase scene was fucking epic, man. Holy, I was not expecting it to be on some like Fast and the Furious type shit, and they gave it to us, and I was like, damn. But okay. Is it just me, or like when they first introduced the Batmobile, did y'all think it was stalling at one point?
Yeah.
Like, when I saw that, I was like, come on, bro. You make us look bad, bro. Get it together. I was like, what happened? But then it turns out it wasn't that, so it was cool. But yeah, that chase scene was dope, man. That was wicked.
I did not think it was stalling, but like now that I understand that you're a Fast and Furious reference, I was sitting next to you, and when he went on the ramp and like busted through like the fire after, like you were like, yeah. I was like,
bro, because just the way it was set up, it was so Fast and the Furious, but like done right. I was like, okay, cool. Like that would never happen, but I appreciate the fact that you guys got a little creative with that. And so that scene was dope, man. Even though we saw it in the trailer, I love that chase scene, man. That was crazy to me, man. And we haven't seen a chase scene like that in a Batman movie.
First Batman, like Batman 1989, he was being chased. Actually, wait, no, the Dark Knight also had a chase scene. No, sorry, the Batman Begins.
Oh yeah, you're right. But I mean, like this was like.
Yeah.
Yo, this was like next level, bro.
Yeah. But lest we forget Dark Knight, Joker, rocket launcher, and the Batmobile. like
Oh,
under
yeah. Okay,
under
yeah,
the bridge passage.
Yeah. That was
Yeah.
pretty sick. That was
Yeah,
pretty sick.
this is actually still better, but I just like lest we
Yeah.
forget that one.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. That one had like a truck do a flip.
Yeah, that's pretty gangster. You can't forget that. You just
Yeah.
forget that. Yeah.
Well, then again, another one of is it on par or slightly less, which is a compliment. Which is a compliment at the same time. Can be a backhanded one though.
So Darcy, you know how you said like the Dark Knight, like there was never any moments for you to breathe. I felt like with that, if we're comparing the two chase scenes, I felt like that kind of gave you a little bit of time to breathe, whereas this was just like high octane gas, like on go revving for like a good solid 10 minutes nonstop, and you're just like, what the fuck just happened? Like, what happened? So yeah, so in that regard, yeah, that I gotta give it to this one. It wins by a small margin, but yeah, I love that scene. What else? The Riddler was great. I loved him. He pretty much won at the end because he kind of got what he wanted. Like Gotham is like in shambles right now and like submerged in water and shit. So I mean, that was pretty cool. What else? The Batmobile. Oh yeah. So again, we were talking about the Batmobile before. I feel like it's like an extension of him in a way where it had its own character, minus the stalling moment. But like, but yeah,
laugh.
it kind of reminded me of like at first I wasn't really feeling it just in terms of the design because it just looked like something straight out of like Fast and the Furious, right? Like where. Dominic Toretto was like, yo, we family. I'm gonna let you borrow this car. Like that's what it felt like. You know?
Dominic Toretto was the one who trained Batman how to like go chase cars.
Yeah,
exactly.
But
did he also train him how to fly?
Yeah,
because Dom knows how to fly across a bridge and not die.
Yeah. Man. Yeah, and then so the con. So the only con I really had was that end part with and spoiler for anyone who hasn't seen it yet. I'm gonna warn you right now. I mean, I haven't really spoiled much, but
we're spoiling. We're spoiling.
I did not like the Joker reveal. I took a moment afterwards to kind of sit with it, and it just didn't. It felt okay. So.
Your mouth was wide open, by the way, when that happened.
I was, but I was kind of like, I after thinking about it, I'm like, this scene just seems kind of corny and out of place. And you know what it reminded me, and you know why it bothered me? Because it reminds me of the Amazing Spider-Man 2 with Dane DeHaan, after Gwen dies and that whole fight scene, and then he's in the prison, and that the dude with the hat, I forget his name, he goes and visits him, and Dane DeHaan's like talking about, or Norman Osborn, is it Norman or Harry Osborn? Sorry,
Harry. Sorry, Harry.
He's like talking about how it's like we've got to expand our rogues gallery or something like that. I want to start small, and he's basically talking about setting up the Sinister Six, and it just came off corny like that. And so I was like, yeah, I felt like it belonged to a different movie. And it also reminded me of was it Justice League or Batman v Superman, where Lex Luthor breaks out of jail and then he meets up with Deathstroke, and then Justice League, and they're like, maybe we should start a league of our own kind of thing. And it was just like, why is everyone doing that shit? Like, why? Like, it became too formulaic for me, and I was just like, yeah, it took me out of the movie a little bit. But I did come across a video of Matt Reeves talking about how Joker was going to actually show up earlier in the film. Batman was actually going to visit him in Arkham and consult with him about what was going on with the Riddler, but they ended up taking it out for whatever reason, and they just left that end scene. I just felt like, and again, I don't mean to compare, but I love how Batman Begins did it, because it was something that you weren't really expecting, and it was subtle. If you're going to set up a villain, I want it to almost be subtle, like a small little nod to the character, but don't just. And I mean, I you can argue that this was kind of subtle, because it's like you don't see his face.
It was not subtle,
but yeah, it's Joker, and like he's giving us full dialogue, and it's just the laugh was weak. I wasn't feeling the laugh. And I mean, give it time, maybe he'll get better. But yeah, wasn't feeling wasn't feeling that. The other thing, and this isn't a gripe against the movie, just in terms of the some of the feedback that I've gotten, and Darcy, you kind of alluded to this off air, but I've noticed that a lot of people have been complaining about for one, the length of the film, which I didn't really have a problem with. I do agree that like if he had made it a little bit shorter in length, it might have been better, but the length didn't bother me. Like I would have watched we watched the 4-hour Justice League was 4 hours. We sat through that entire film, right? I know, Umar, you're not a fan, but sorry, I know that's a sore spot for you.
Well, I feel bad because you guys kept yelling at me to shut up, even though I was just breathing.
Well, you're terrible to watch movies with. You were good with this one, though. I'll agree. You were good with this one.
There's breathing, Umar, and then there's like is it like a like what do you call it, Lamaze class over here? Like you like relax back there with the breathing techniques.
Oh man. Okay, but my final thing, the gripe that I have is more so referencing the race hate that I've been hearing from this movie in terms of how they race swapped.
What?
Yeah, because they race swapped some of the characters. Like Commissioner Gordon is played by a black person.
Serious?
Catwoman's played by a black person. But it was like what people don't understand, and yeah, I'm not surprised at all. But what people don't understand is unless it has something to do with the culture, then I don't see a problem with race swapping a character. There's nothing about Commissioner Gordon that states that he is a white man. There's nothing about Selena Kyle that states that she's a white woman. In fact, in the Adam West version, Catwoman was played. Well, I think she was played by two different actresses, but the first one I think was Eartha Kitt, who's a black woman, who was a black woman, R.I.P. But yeah, so I think, like, I mean, for example, like, you can't make Black Panther a white guy. You just can't do that.
And we talked about this in a we talked about this already. We talked about this where, like Darcy was saying, like if Batman got turned into a black person, that would have some like ramifications on the character because, like, like how can his entire family have the length of history it has, be that rich and be black? Like it would have to be a brand new world that would negate the racism.
Yeah, or the whole history of his character would have to be stoked in racism as a part of the character and what his family went through. Whereas, like Commissioner Gordon and Catwoman, there is nothing specific that does, like, doesn't stop her from being a cat burglar. Doesn't stop him. I mean, you could argue that there's definitely racism in the police force, and Commissioner Gordon could talk to that, but it doesn't change the character. It just adds a layer or an extra conversation if that's relevant to the story. However, there's so much corruption. I feel like racism in the police force is the least of his problems. which is, I feel like that Commissioner Gordon just be like, you think that's what I'm worried about? What he said?
Yeah.
He said the N-word. He also did a lot of other things that I'm trying to get him for.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But all in all, I really, really enjoyed this movie. I highly recommend it, especially if you are a Batman fan. Sorry. This is a damn near perfect Batman film, and I am so excited to see where they take this franchise. I hope that we don't have to wait like 5 years like the rumor is for the next one. Yeah, apparently like he's not like he wants to take a little bit of a break, and
which
they're slating. I think they're saying the next one will come out in less than 5 years is what they said. So that kind of makes me a little antsy about it, because I'm like, why you gotta say less than 5 years, meaning that 5 years is like, oh, this is the max you gotta wait. Like that, I don't feel good about that.
Sorry, I just saw Courtney's latest comment. So Courtney says, did all those losers taking issue with this forget about the talented Halle Berry? Catwoman was a cheesy movie, but she absolutely killed it, and it can't be denied she played the role phenomenally. I don't want that to be a hill I die on, Courtney. I'm not gonna lie.
I'll fucking die on that hill, man. Yo, that basketball scene, for any of y'all that remember that, yo, like I can't forgive Halle for that. As fine as she is, man, I cannot unsee that. Yeah, Google that shit, YouTube it, and tell and see if you still hold strong to that statement, Courtney. I can't support you on that one, man. I'm sorry. I can't.
So maybe the Halle Berry example wasn't the best. But the thing is, Catwoman has been done black before. So the fact that people are still having gripes with it now just shows that, well, they're like, it's stupid to have problems with it. It's just an extra layer of stupid.
Courtney, what are you doing, man? You're killing me right now, yo.
No. Ooh, the basketball scene is iconic.
What I wonder, what's better, the basketball scene or the Daredevil versus Elektra playground fight scene?
Ooh, now that's a question. That's a question.
Those feel like they came from the same playbook.
Yeah, bro. The same playground.
It's kind of like the person who did the Catwoman didn't know about the reviews for the Daredevil movie. It was like, oh, I'm taking all these notes. I'm stealing all this formula.
Oh man. Oh my God! Now I know you're trolling.
All right. So, sorry, Darcy, you had something you want to say before we finish?
No, I just wanted to know who wants to take the break. You didn't say who. You said he, but you didn't say who.
Oh, sorry. Matt Reeves.
Damn.
I figured Matt Reeves. He honestly sounded tired in a lot of his aspects. So like I think he just wants a break, because this probably was a lot of effort for him to like do reshoots, do delays, all that sort of stuff. So
yeah. It hurts.
Greedy. I want that shit like tonight.
I'm just saying, once the box office keeps like well, it's not blowing up, but as long as the box office continues and also the reviews are continuing, the network, like the studios are going to go back to him and be like, please come back sooner. And he'll be like, okay,
pay me my monies first.
No. See,
or give me creative control.
Yes, 100%. WB, here's the plan. What you do is you go and you find yourself a good tropical island in the Caribbean, and you basically just rent that thing out for 2 months, and then you allow Matt Reeves to go there and just chill out with no distraction. Just like pay for, hand on foot, like every service this guy needs so he can relax, so he can get himself right. Okay. Like
100%.
Take care of his mental health, stay out of it, and let the ideas ponder on their own. Don't pressure him. Just also give him the opportunity to relax.
And also do what they did for The Dark Knight, because in Batman Begins, you can tell based on like how the movie went, the studios got really involved in what had to be done. The second movie with The Dark Knight, they were like, you can do whatever the hell you want.
I mean,
yeah,
don't get in the way. If you had any involvement and it came out this good, like if you try to interfere and it came out this good, definitely stay the fuck out the way. You gonna make bank.
Yeah. And I hear that the Warner Brothers were the ones who pushed for the 3-hour one.
Ooh.
That's what I hear. It could be wrong.
I think off of the strength of the Joker successfully for them, right? The artistic film clearly had more legs than a lot of other stuff that they did critically, and I feel like it did financially well. And it's still being talked about to this point. And so if they probably saw what was coming with this, with the vision, as pieces came together, like this is going to be good. We've already proven that artistic films, not your formulaic films, are working. So just push it down that road. And yeah, I could see them being like, oh, we want to go 3 hours. Yes, no, let's definitely do those 3 hours, right? Let's definitely get the full artsy thing out of the way, because they screwed up enough. So
yeah, because the thing is, it's like it's a 3-hour movie, but I wouldn't even know where to cut this film. Like I wouldn't know what to cut out.
Okay, I think this is an excellent time for me to jump in.
I don't like that as your segue.
So I said this in our theater review, and I'll say it again. This movie I enjoyed a great deal. Don't get me wrong, I enjoyed it a great deal. For me, I gave it an 8.25 out of 10 because it wasn't an 8.5 for me, but it definitely wasn't an 8 for me. Like it was somewhere in the middle, so I might as well just like do with them numerical value. I'm going to start with my cons. My cons with it was predominantly the length, and mostly because the length, like I was with this film from the first scene. I was like, okay, here we go. And I think where I was like, this movie might actually beat The Dark Knight for me was when they had the jail scene with the Riddler, and he just starts like Paul Dano in that scene was a revelation. Like when he starts singing at the end, and Bruce is like Batman's like beating against the window. I'm just like, well, that's a fucked up situation. But for me, I like so where I started getting frustrated with the film was when they get somewhat cheesy and melodramatic. And that was when just after he cut the wire, the electrical wire, and fell into the water. I know this is differentiates where and I actually like what you said, Tactix, in terms of like him being reborn in the water. I didn't get that while watching it. And so maybe that's a missed opportunity on my part, and I'm fully willing to concede that point. But from that moment until the rest of the movie ended is when I was like, this is unnecessary. This is dragging on. And like, that's when I felt the passage of time. I felt that they should have, they could have tweaked the ending, and I'll like I can throw up some ideas if you want, but like they could have tweaked the ending so it like ended sooner. I didn't like him carrying survivors on on the top of the building. I didn't like the fact that they like really hit it on the head, saying that he has to be hope and not just vengeance. Because like to be honest, I was really enjoying the subtlety that you were describing, Tactics, about like like you had elements, but they didn't hit you over the head with it. The ending felt that they started hitting you over the head, and then they had the Joker and Riddler scene. If anything, I felt that it needed to be shorter, and it also needed to be an actual post-credit scene instead of like before the credits, because it felt so out of place being there. It just like happened. And then you had the scene with Selina and Batman talking, and then you had their like chase of the between the two of them with the motorcycle. I'm like, these are like inherently, these aren't wrong things. These aren't bad things. But after everything, it was somewhat of a letdown. I would have preferred that, like, okay, if you were going to flood Gotham and make it and lead into the next movie, which would be No Man's Land, sure. I would have chosen for him to not to have done that, but fine. Let's say that happens. But I would have preferred to also see that, like, with the lawlessness that is to come, that Bruce is actually being called constantly, but no longer from just the light that Gordon had set up, but by everybody. Everyone is like kind of like doing something to call Batman over to them, because now he's inspired people to actually trust him. Something along those lines. Nonetheless, the last half hour of the film did a lot of damage for me. I'm not saying that objectively speaking, it is a bad choice. I'm just saying that for me, this was something that it didn't work. And I went from thinking this to be a 9 out of 10 film to an 8.25. Because it just like, did you guys ever watch The Crazy Stupid Love?
Fucking love that movie.
Right. I absolutely love that film. And then at the end, when the son starts giving a speech, and then he gives a speech at the high school, I'm like, what the fuck? You guys are ruining this movie. This movie was perfect, and then you guys just started ruining the movie. This is similar. It just went on for too long.
That scene didn't bother me at all, by the way. And Crazy Stupid Love.
Then that scene like pissed me the fuck off. I was like, this is some bullshit. Anyway, so the ending felt cliche and it felt over dramatic when the entire rest of the film wasn't. and that's what bothered me. And it kind of like a lot of things that I was hoping would be better didn't end up happening because like it was a letdown at the end. So I still consider it to be a good film, but these are my cons. Everything else is stylistically different. The emo Bruce Wayne didn't mind it, especially if the next movie shows that he's learned from it and now is the playboy, and also while being the philanthropist. Or if he doesn't want, if like, fine, if Robert Pattinson doesn't want to be a playboy Batman, then at least be like, I don't know, a super jovial or someone who thinks that like, everyone thinks is like a druggie, someone that no one's going to think, oh, of course he's Batman. Because like right now, it's kind of hard for people. It's kind of hard for me to think that no one, including the Riddler, have figured out that Bruce Wayne, who is a recluse, is Batman. Because how is he not one of the suspects put on there? But like again, like I still liked how he portrayed an emo Bruce Wayne. It was interesting. I also liked his like it was short. I would have preferred a little bit more elaboration, especially for a 3-hour film. But I wanted to see more Alfred. Having Alfred in was something like Andy Serkis was doing a great job, and especially the scene in the hospital. He got his chance to act. He got his chance to be Alfred. And even as something as small as the cufflinks. The cufflink scene was beautifully done. And I wanted more of that. Like you need oddly enough, and I guess we know by now because we've seen so many different variations of it, but the film almost made me feel like they expected you to know the love between Alfred and Batman as opposed to showing it. It was there, but it like the feeling of betrayal that Bruce had in the hospital just mildly felt a bit unearned because he's like, you only had 2 scenes with this guy. But again, this is nitpicking, and I'm admitting this is nitpicking because like aside from that, I really enjoy this film. I enjoyed seeing him having to learn how to be better Batman. Like in the beginning, he knocks on the penguin's door and just fights his way in. Then he does the Bruce Wayne thing, and he's like, "I'm going to let my status get me in." And then he actually does the Batman thing. He sneaks in. He cuts the power. He's hanging from the ceiling. He then fights everybody. Okay, actually, that hallway fight scene in the dark with all the guns going off, I will say that my feelings about that hallway fight scene are reminiscent of my feelings about the film overall, from the beginning to the execution, all the way up until the end, where he just walks up to someone with an automatic gun shooting at his chest. And I said this when I saw the trailer. I hated the fact that people like he's just walking up to a guy who's gunning him down, and he's just standing there taking bullets and then disarming him. I was like, that's some bullshit, and I still felt that way. But everything else in that scene, from the moment he entered the Iceberg Lounge to the moment he was getting gunned down, I was like, this is Batman. This is what I've been waiting for. And then they fucked up at the end with him walking up to a guy, and I was just like, come on, you did an entire hallway. Why would you end it with him walking up to a dude and letting him gun you down? So yeah, that is where you can see like my insane views on Batman just taking over and my nitpicking. But I enjoyed seeing him pull his parachute and mess that up. I enjoyed the chase as well. I love the detective aspect. I also liked seeing that he was actually learning how to be a better detective through the Riddler. That the Riddler was actually forcing him to think outside of what he's used to, because like he was saying in the beginning of the film, like all the nights are blurring together. He doesn't know if he's having an effect because all he's doing is like brutalizing people. And now he's like, no, I need to be more methodical. And now, granted, like we will see where this flooding takes over, but there is actual character growth for Bruce Wayne and Batman. It's like he's becoming a better Batman. He's becoming a better Bruce Wayne. He's finessing, and apparently he's also using venom at the end of the movie, which I wanted it to like. This is just my own personal gripe, but it does hold in the comics that Batman has used venom in the past. So like me being upset the fact that he used it this early is just me being me. And so like I would have preferred it being adrenaline, but adrenaline isn't green. So I guess it is a good nod showing that they're eventually going to bring in Bane, and seeing this version of a Bane would be fascinating to watch.
Yes, it would.
Umar, 2 quick questions. Yes or no answers only. Did you like this film?
Yes.
Are you sure?
Yes. I didn't love this film though.
For an 8.25, man, I just got a whole lot of I don't know about this film.
But it was going to be a 9 for me. It was going 9 for about 2.5 hours, and then the last half hour took it down a massive peg.
So with you, 9 is love this film, and then everything under 9 is pretty much Fast and Furious 9.
Hey, hold up. Fast and Furious is not compared to this.
I get what you're saying though about the ending. I kind of felt like that as well. And as you were talking about some of those scenes, I'm like, I can't really argue your points because I felt like they could have shaved that off, or they didn't quite stick the landing for the ending as well as I might have wanted them to. You know what I mean? Like I feel like to compare it to Batman Begins, solid ending. Very, very solid ending. I felt like they stuck that landing. With this one, it was kind of like the way he landed in the movie after the hand gliding. Maybe not that bad.
He walked away.
He walked away. So it was like, okay, yeah, brush his shoulders off and try again.
He did hit a bridge, a truck, and a car. But
that motherfucker rolled, bro.
He rolled into the street.
But only thing I don't agree with you is the whole Alfred thing. I felt like, again, it was the subtleties of that, and yes, maybe they were expecting us to kind of know the relationship, but I feel like, again, a lot of these things are going to be fleshed out even more, because that scene, that hospital scene, it was kind of like, it made me want to see. Yeah, and it made me want to see more, because in the beginning, you kind of get a sense that he's a brat. He's still kind of he's in his mid-20s, but he's still kind of a fucking brat. You know what I mean? But even after that scene where he says, "You're not my father," right? It was kind of like
that. Also felt kind of out of nowhere as well.
It did. It kind of reminded me of Spider-Man with Tobey Maguire when he's like, he said that. But then in the very same, the next scene, Alfred is just there, and he's like, he gives him his breakfast, and then now they're solving a riddle together, and it's like, okay, I guess that was.
I love that transition. I love
and I thought that was great. So it kind of like disregarded whatever he said in the beginning, because it was like, okay, like Alfred knows his place and everything, and then that hospital scene kind of solidifies that again, because it's like, I'm not trying to be your father. I did the best I could to raise you, but that moment where he's like, I taught you how to fight, but I didn't know how to raise you. And then Bruce, he has a moment where he's like, fuck, man, like I could have lost this guy. He's like the closest thing to family that I have. And like, for me, I felt that was a great scene. And yeah, we don't get
I love Alfred that scene.
A whole lot.
I love that scene.
Yeah, but like what we get from Alfred, it speaks volumes for the character, because he even has like scars on his face and shit, and it's like they allude to the fact that he taught Bruce how to fight and everything. So it's like, yo, I want to see, like, it makes me want more, but it didn't feel like it was lacking. It gave me enough to like, it gave me a little taste, because it's like, that in the sequel, he's they're gonna give Alfred way more to do, and on top of that, the subtleties of like the fact that like, okay, this is a different universe, and the misdirect about how we almost lost Alfred. Like, I legit thought that they were gonna kill him off and pull out Aunt May, and I was like, yo, what the fuck? But then they did it. But like they totally got me, because I was like, Matt Reeves, yo, bro, what are you doing? Like, seriously, what are you doing? But
Matt Reeves just can't stop killing Andy Serkis.
Yeah, bro. Yeah, man. So I was like, shit, but. Yeah, I thought that was great. So I don't know. I don't know if I agree with you completely about the Alfred thing, but everything else.
What you're saying is like you wanted more. Like I will admit, there's a level of selfishness me saying I wanted more. So I will acquiesce to that. But I also felt that like there needed to be a little bit more of Alfred for the relationship to be shown, for the relationship to be felt. Darcy, what you were saying about Gotham, actually no wait, I think it was Tactics. One of you had brought up the fact that like,
Darcy.
yeah, this film made you feel that Gotham is just like a lost city. It's like I mean, if Ra's al Ghul came to me and said, I'm gonna blow it up, I'm like, you know what? Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, you definitely do kind of get it more. Yeah.
Yeah.
But like I did actually enjoy this film. It's just that I told you this was going to happen. I was going to have massive expectations when the early reviews came out. You saw how excited I was. And unlike The Dark Knight, this didn't fully meet them.
Yeah, but wait for the sequel, bro. Wait for the sequel. Because the sequel is going to be a mix of Batman and then whoever the villain is. So if they do Mr. Freeze, that's going to be a Mr. Freeze movie.
Yeah, man. Just hold on your seats, man. 2027 it's coming around the corner.
Let's hope not, man.
That hurts.
Yeah,
that's way too long, man.
And just finally about like the performances, the Penguin, Colin Farrell, nailed it.
Yeah,
he nailed it. So I know we've already talked about her, but like Zoe Kravitz, I really enjoyed her Catwoman. I will say that her her chemistry with Robert Pattinson, it didn't 100% hit home with me, but at the same time, it didn't feel forced either. It just was like, okay.
Yo, okay, now compare that Dark Knight Rises chemistry.
Let's not.
As in, yeah, it was succeeded. Is all I'm saying.
All I'm saying is like,
don't tell me you think Dark Knight Rises had better chemistry than this.
I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that. What I was about to say was that Michelle Pfeiffer and Michael Keaton are kind of where I'm at. So like,
I wasn't.
That's not fair, yo.
I wasn't going there.
I'm sorry. We're comparing to The Dark Knight, but me comparing them to Michelle Pfeiffer and Michael Keaton.
No, I'm not comparing to The Dark Knight. I'm not comparing it. I said Batman Begins, yo. Batman Begins.
Yeah,
Michael Keaton and Michelle Pfeiffer. Damn, bro, that you're pulling all the stops with that one.
I'm just saying, if it they didn't have the magic.
Not many have that kind of magic, yo.
So that's some.
Did they ever date in real life?
I don't know.
I don't think social media was around then. You know what I'm saying? So we just don't know that stuff.
Nonetheless, like I loved Zoe Kravitz alone as a character. She did a great job. And like her kicks look like they would kill me. Like they were fast and like bam.
Yeah, she was mean and like and she was so like, how do I put it? She was so sexy without being overly sexual, but still having a sexual power that was impressive and looking like she was like at one point she was like, I can take care of myself, and you were like, yeah, I believe it.
You probably can.
like look at her. She is not a tall woman, but she don't like when you see what she can do, you're like, yeah, okay. Like no arguments.
Yeah. And also okay. Also, John Turturro as Carmen Falcone was disturbing.
Yeah, that was surprising because
I wasn't expecting that.
I'm always waiting to laugh when that guy's around. So I was like, oh, do I laugh? No, I don't laugh.
Also, I like for most of the movie, I'm like, does he? Because like when I knew that Selena was his daughter because that's what's in the comics, but like when he was like touching her face when they first walked into, I was like, does he know? Like that's weird, right? And then like again, like he when she goes up to him and be like, I want to talk to you. He's like, yeah, absolutely. And he's like talking to her, and she's like crying and stuff. I'm like, so he like touched his daughter's face that way, and then it turned out that he didn't know. I'm like, now what the fuck was their relationship before? And I was just like, that's an interesting. I guess we'll never know, but like that was interesting. But yeah, like I was very creeped out by him. Okay, Jeffrey Wright is just hitting it out of the park in whatever he's in, whether it's Westworld, What If, or this. I'm just like, Jeffrey Wright's killing it. Just
And their
killing it.
dynamic, man, was so great. The buddy cop thing.
It was perfect.
And Penguin's line was like, "What is this? Good cop, bad cop?"
Batshit cop.
Oh yeah, yeah. That was
I
good.
also enjoyed the fact that he is literally the first person to call Batman the greatest detective as an insult, and it hurt my pride a little bit. I'm like, oh come on, Batman, you made that mistake. I'm like, wait, hold on, he's still learning.
Yeah,
He's still learning, man.
yeah.
You gotta respect the Riddler's humor, man. Thumb drive killed me, yo.
Oh my god,
my god,
that was
USB.
Hilarious.
that was so good.
Hilarious.
That was. There was actually a good humor in this film in ways where it was never trying to make
Sick
a
humor.
joke.
It was dark
Yeah.
humor.
Yeah,
dark
but-
humor,
There was a couple of points. I forget what Batman did, but I was just like laughing. Like a lot of people laughed at like the punch when he punched Gordon, which was it was funny. But there was some other stuff that like he just had like some dry humor where it was like an early like hint at that dry humor Batman. I think it was a lot of his interactions with Catwoman where like they would just stuff she would say and his dry response, and I was just like chuckling to
You have a
myself. I
lot
was
of
like, yeah,
cat.
that's just good.
I actually really liked when the guy's like we don't want to get blood on your costume. He's like, yours or mine. I was like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
but like,
Or
no,
I love the scene where he's like looking at the contact lenses as if he's gonna like say a remark.
yeah,
They look good.
yeah.
I'm like, this guy just doesn't get women at all.
I also gotta say I know people have been saying online, and even Matt Reeves says that it's an interesting idea. People are thinking that Robin is going to be the mayor's son.
Yeah.
I heard about that too. Yeah.
I am not a fan with that. I would prefer they not do that.
I was like the way he looked at him, I was like, yo, like, and that's an example of what Tactix was saying about how his expressions or even like his boots walking through a room.
He didn't say anything in that scene.
Yeah, it spoke so much volume. Yeah, he looked at that kid, and there was so much. Now it's just like, I'm like, yo, if this kid want vengeance, Batman gonna bring him in. Like that's like I'm like 100%. I kind of feel you though on him not being Robin, but like then you would need though they did show him being like a ninja, and I was kind of like maybe he's involved in gymnastics and we don't know about it, like he's not part of the circus, but he does. But like I don't know what his name is. Definitely not Grayson. So
It was something Mitchell.
yeah, I that much I remember being like, yeah, it's definitely not a Grayson, but yeah, like I'm kind of intrigued by that idea. At the same time, I'm kind of with you as well, but I kind of want him to like show up as something, and it not be Robin, and he doesn't need to be like a sidekick, but I kind of would like him to show up as something in the world where he's trying to be something like a vigilante. And maybe he's not good or like he does bad things or something in the future and Batman intersects him. But it's just something. I feel like there's something there, and I love for it to like be come back around at some point and pay off in some kind of way.
I wanted to say this. So speaking of Robin, so remember the I don't think it was the Joker gang, but the guys in the beginning with the white face paint. So
the guy with the half one.
The guy with the half, he actually placed Tim Drake on Titans. Yeah, I don't know why they crossed that over, but yeah, it's a fun fact.
Interesting. Unfortunately, Maybot, we have already talked about the Venom thing, but it's cool. Though, what she says, why couldn't they bring in a Cirque du Soleil thing? That would be actually really awesome.
Ooh,
where Grayson is a son of Cirque du Soleil.
That would be a much more logical thing than a circus. Outside of, because like that means everyone's leaving the city to go outside the city for a circus. Where are you gonna set up this? We're gonna set up the circus, right? Like in the middle of the city, like it doesn't make no sense. So
no, that's a great idea for a Robin, and also you having someone die on stage for Cirque du Soleil would be really would be something that Bruce Wayne would be a part of.
And of course, it's going to happen in Gotham. It's like, oh, and after a 300 show tour, like
the last stop was Gotham.
Yeah, like nothing.
Everyone died.
Like everything was perfect, and this day just went off the rails.
Okay, so I have heard a few people, including my buddy Jimmy, complaining about the riddles in this movie. I will admit they weren't as intricate as I would have liked.
They were
and
for
I've
me,
said that
man.
before.
That's all I'm saying. I was completely. I'm like, I'm stumped.
I'm not. Well, I should say I'm.
Tactix would be like, I couldn't put my thumb on it.
My head would have been blown the fuck off. That's all I'm saying, bro. Like,
Okay. Yeah, the Riddler was terrifying. Like they've like made a modern gritty version of the Riddler very well. Where the fact that like he liked puzzles and he just like took that to the whole another level. But okay, so I think we've sufficiently talked about the movie. Tactics, I think it's time for us to transition into your topic.
Yes. Hold on, I'm gonna switch. I'm gonna turn this one off for a second. Okay, so I presented the guys with a new segment that I am officially calling it until we end up changing it at some point.
The official statement for now. Well,
so this segment is called "Make It Make Sense," and the whole objective here is I gave them 1 to 2 minutes, an opportunity for them to pitch a story or a plot centered around either an obscure character or a character that normally wouldn't make sense for this particular franchise or this that's the direction that Matt Reeves is currently going, and try to make it sense for this world. So we've all Umar and Darcy have all picked, and myself, we've all picked our characters, our villains. And so who wants to go first?
I'll go first. I'm going first. Because I know that Darcy's is going to take a long time because he apparently has like pages of notes.
2 minutes is not going to be enough. Just letting you know.
All right. So actually, I want to see your faces when I bring this up. So like, Deacon, you like,
yeah.
So I was thinking of a campy supervillain, and I have some honorable mentions like Maxwell Zeus, and I think I was also thinking at one point the Calendar Man, but I decided to land on Egghead. The portrayed in the 1960s TV series by the wonderful Vincent Price. Now, there is no way in hell this iteration is going to make it to Matt Reeves' version.
Can you imagine? The Penguin would have a field day.
Yeah, it's like you have whoever's going to play Egghead being like, exactly. Excellent. And I'm like, nope. Penguin's just to shoot him just for the sake of that. So
that's
I was
my
like,
egg drive.
Yeah. Okay, so for those who are unaware, Egghead is a super villain who is one of the few people who is able to deduce that Bruce Wayne is Batman. He is incredibly intelligent. He is said to be the most intelligent villain in Batman's rogue gallery. This is in the 1960s, mind you.
And he makes a mean breakfast.
My man, he can make all kinds of eggs.
Oh, man. His omelets, top notch.
He breaks everything to make them. Anyway, so I was like, okay, how am I going to make this individual into Matt Reeves' universe? How do I make him realistic and gritty and dark? So Egghead is going to be his nickname because he was bullied growing up because he was always the smartest in class, whether it was elementary school, high school, university, at work. He was always intelligent. He couldn't help himself but prove it. So everyone would tease him, bully him, make fun of him. And he was always called Egghead because that's what people did back in the day. So he grows up to become a lawyer. And he went in different areas of law and eventually settled on estates and wills lawyer. He worked for also life insurance and that sort of thing. But because he was so intelligent, he remembered every single person who has ever made fun of him from when he was a child to an adult. And so he would poison every one of them through their eggs or breakfast somehow or some way.
Yes.
But where the dark turn is that the partners would be the ones who would actually be the cause of death because they were the ones who provided the food and would end up killing the whole family sometimes or just their target. And because they were the ones who served and made the food that and ended up poisoning them, he would create legal loopholes for him to get them out of the life insurance beneficiaries and make it go towards him.
Ooh.
That's dope.
Yo.
Is it?
Why are you laughing though?
No, it's like because the situation feels a little scrambled, if you know what I'm saying.
I'm just trying to leave some humor in there for people to make jokes a little bit.
Oh, absolutely. You had to. He like literally kills them with eggs. Is just like
you can take that part out. I was just saying like
that's the part where I would like be in the middle of the film, and like.
Well, you can also make it dark in the sense of it's like everyone is like making eggs, and you're actually worried did he poison those eggs or not.
That's when you become a vegetarian.
Or a vegan.
Or just skip breakfast, motherfucker.
Anyway, so yeah, that was going to be how I would portray Egghead in a Matt Reeves movie.
Interesting. Okay.
I'm so glad you went down that path.
Hilarious. I love it. I fucking love it.
Oh, that was great.
Oh,
all right. T, how about you go next?
Okay. So my pick for make it make sense, I went with Killer Croc. And I'm going to read the synopsis that I came up with. And so I'll just read it out. Born Waylon Jones. At birth, he was diagnosed with a genetic skin disorder known as ichthyosis vulgaris. That's a real condition. I just don't know how to pronounce it properly. But basically, the condition is where the dead skin cells accumulate in thick, dry scales on your skin surface. And he was constantly berated for this condition. Waylon became a loner in his younger years, but was befriended by a young girl who took a liking to him. The two became close friends until local bullies kidnapped the girl and brutally murdered her. Waylon sought out revenge and attacked one of the guys responsible. But before he could land his killing blow, Waylon was ambushed by the bully's friends, captured, and thrown in a cage as punishment. He was blamed for the murder of the girl and was left for dead with nothing but rats to feed off of. He was eventually found and sent off to a Latin American prison. And this prison basically harbors some of the most heinous, ruthless criminals in the world. It's considered a shithole to the point where the government doesn't even care what goes on in this place, which makes it very easy for shady business to go down, from illegal fight matches against other inmates to experimental drug tests, both of which Waylon partakes in unwillingly. It's here that he's given an experimental drug that's not yet been given a name. The after effects of the experiment leave Waylon with an increase in testosterone, thus increasing his size and strength, but also making him super aggressive. Waylon manages to escape from the prison years later. Waylon is found alive and he's trying to fit into society, but he's ostracized for his appearance, being referred to as a freak of nature or a monster. Enraged by the constant rejection and still suffering the loss of the only person who could ever bear the sight of him, he falls into a deep depression, contemplating ending his life, when he notices one of the bullies from his past, all grown up as a rich, pretty boy prick employed at Wayne Enterprise. Waylon's blood boils at the sight of this man, and it's at this moment that the real monster within is unleashed. Waylon embraces his reptilian form with tattoos resembling scales, modifications to his teeth to make them razor sharp, and fingernails sharp as knives. Waylon hunts down the bully and attacks him. He tears through his body and eats part of his face off. As he chews through his victim's flesh, the taste of his victim's blood gives Waylon an orgasmic feeling that rushes through his body. So throughout the movie, he goes on a hunt for the other 3 victims or the bullies from the past, and he successfully finds and is eating. So he becomes a cannibal basically, and he finds 2 out of the 3 men from the past before Batman ultimately intervenes, foiling his plan for revenge, but Waylon manages to escape. It is then that we go back to the end credit scene where it goes back to the prison in Latin America. And basically the setup during that, when Waylon was in that prison and doing the illegal fights, he faces off against an unknown character who would later then be revealed as Bane. And then
I knew that's where you were going when you brought.
And then Bane basically gets the experimental drug, and then he gets induced with venom. And then the end credit scene is basically Bane hearing the story of Killer Croc, which is where he basically got his name, Killer Croc, in prison because he was winning all the fights. And so Bane actually ended up losing that fight against Waylon when they were in prison. So now he has a kind of like this revenge or there's a vendetta against him because he's like, Bane is like all about power. And so he gets the venom injected for himself. And then basically the scene is where you hear the story of Killer Croc, and then you hear the story of Batman and how Batman saved the day, yada, yada. And Bane is like, we will soon meet, Batman, but first I have business to attend to. And then he goes after Killer Croc, and that's how we bring him into the Matt Reeves universe.
Interesting.
Boom. That's mine.
Yo, that shit was excellent, man. Excellent. I had to go one more time. Actually, I'm glad you took that one because I had like Killer Croc was in my mind, but I definitely wouldn't have taken it to the level you took it to. So
yeah, you took it way further than I was thinking.
I was because I didn't want to make
bad
him like
for the guy. Like his life is horrible.
Well, because like I did a little bit of like research on him, and it's similar in the sense where like Batman always sympathized with Killer Croc because I think there's a storyline or whatever where Batman shows sympathy to Killer Croc because of who he is and like how he's perceived or whatever. So I kind of wanted to highlight that a little bit and then kind of expand that. And I changed around his storyline a little bit because I wanted to obviously make it less like he's like a metahuman and more of like he's just this guy who was born with this genetic skin disorder, similar to like, I don't know if you guys ever saw the trailer, the Mortal Kombat Rebirth trailer, where they're talking about Reptile and he has that condition or whatever.
Yeah.
And he's like a cannibal. So that was kind of the direction that I was kind of trying to take it with this, where he's like just this guy with a skin condition and he develops his taste for blood and like cannibalism.
An orgasmic taste for blood.
Yeah. And then how he gets his size is just through this experimental drug where he's experimenting with the venom and everything. And it leaves him like similar to how testosterone, like when guys take steroids or whatever, and they get roid rage and that aggressive behavior comes out. I wanted to kind of highlight that specifically as the after effects of venom. And then I was like, okay, so how do I tie this? How do I make that make sense now and tie that in together? And so I was like, okay, well, we introduced Bane into it. And I know that in the comics, Bane and Killer Croc actually fought at one point. So I was like, oh, okay, so this is all connecting. All right, perfect. So then that was kind of like my whole general idea in terms of how I was going to steer this in a cohesive direction as best as I could. So
I agree.
Respect.
I agree. Yeah, like especially how you open that up and started reading it. I was like, why not? I'm not that prepared.
I just couldn't spitball it off the cuff like you guys, so I had to write it down. So.
This was not off the cuff. I spent like half a day thinking up different scenarios, and this was the one I actually liked for my own self. I love that you actually wrote this one out. Nice.
Awesome.
All right, Darcy, give us your 5-minute pitch.
All right, yeah. So yeah, definitely on that note. Yeah, so I like I'll give some honorable mentions. I was thinking about Killer Croc before. I was also thinking about Calendar Man or whatever his name was. But I decided I went through a Google search and I was like, I want something very unexpected, right? Because Tactix was like, go for something that's like doesn't make sense, and I'm like, oh, I gotta find something. So I was Googling. I went worst Batman villains, and and as I was scrolling through a list, because I kept getting the same villains over and over again, So I came through the list and I found one, and an idea popped in my head, and I just went back to it. And the villain's name is Mr. Camera. We gotta throw up the picture. Okay, all right. So first off, the actual character will not look like this. Kind of won't look like this. Okay, so what I want this to be is that so I'm trying to actually have notes, and I got confused by my first note. So this character would be inspired by the events of the Riddler, specifically about the Twitch deaths that, like, when he was live streaming near the end of, and everyone was going out and you know, doing the killings. So inspired by the Riddler, he'd be focusing on live streaming, but on a grander scale. He's also a character that actually doesn't like the spotlight to be put on him. He's actually making other people be filmed in heinous acts. And so here's where things are going to get really interesting. And I know Tactix is going to like this, okay? What we're going to do is we're going to take inspiration from the show Black Mirror, the episode Shut Up and Dance, where the people had done bad things, and they had they were being texted, either do this or I expose your secret. Instead of it just being them doing it in private, they have to live stream them doing something really bad. And what's going to happen as things progress is that there's going to be multiple things happening in the city at the same time. It's not that the cameraman, Mr. Camera, is like a mastermind. Is that he's just keeping the Batman busy with a lot of people having to do multiple things as things progress.
That's interesting.
In terms of this costume, what I actually want to incorporate and do a playback to it is that since the media doesn't know who's behind it, they give him the name Mr. Camera, and they do that like caricature like this or something in that essence because they don't know, right? And it's all about like the camera aspect of things. And so with like people basically being forced to do things and they're being captured, like we could take from the inspiration of like being strapped to the bomb. But what I wanted it to be is that it would be like one person would be forced to do something and then force another person into another event. And they would end up with something where like an innocent person ends up being put in a bad situation against like the mayor. And now the mayor has to decide either he's going to expose some secrets or like something bad is going to happen. Basically, inspired by the whole tearing down the system of the Riddler aspect of things. Now, I'm trying to look at the rest of my notes here.
I think I like that better than mine.
Yeah, again, this will all kind of accumulate up into the end where I want Batman to be put in, ironically, a situation that reminiscent, I don't know why this came to my head, but of the Jim Carrey Riddler movie where at the end, this is going to be kind of sound weird, but where Batman had to choose between Robin and the girl that he liked, but not quite that, where it's the idea of Batman having to be choosing between two impossible choices, like between an innocent person and somebody he cares about, or something where it's a very morally gray decision, right? Where all of this stuff happens, and for him to stop it, it's placing him in a situation that's very, very difficult, and it's like, what would you do, kind of a thing. In the end, one of the most important things that I had in my mind about this whole character is that everyone's always calling him Mr. Camera. But in the end, when he outsmarts him and reveals, actually the character would be revealed to be a woman, just also identifying things about people's biases of the whole situation. I just wanted that whole flip because I was like thinking about being Mr. Camera, and then in the end, it's just not. And one more thing about this whole character. I want this character, the female, especially since it's Mr. Camera and it's female the whole time, that this character is actually showing up throughout the entire film, the entire time. It's I was thinking the same thing. You have no idea that the character's there because it doesn't put a spotlight on themselves. It puts a spotlight on the corruption in Gotham the whole time. So yeah, that's my idea for Mr. Camera.
I like it. I like it a lot.
If we could vote, I would vote for yours.
I like it.
Yo, Matt Reeves, you better be listening to this, man. Darcy got
Yeah, when the idea came in my head, I was like scrolling, like Mr. Kim. Ooh. because the thing is like the camera part is so relevant in today's world, and
Yeah.
that's what made me stop. I was like, cameras. What do we use all fucking day in our lives? Like we put cameras on ourselves all day, and now what happens when somebody wants to put the camera on corruption and all that kind of stuff and just tear everything down? So yeah, that was my idea.
Fire.
Yo, I really want to see the Eggman. The Egghead. That was I like, you know what I kind of want that to be like. I would love for that to be like the beginning of the film, and he's wrapping it up. You know,
I would want Condiment Man to be something that like was and then like be something that's wrapping up. Actually,
I don't know how that's gonna work, or like it's like a Condiment Man and Egghead duo.
A friend of mine, Chris, he actually came up with a really interesting idea. He was like, this guy, he gets like run out of business because he's his condiments are they don't pass health and safety sort of thing. So he gets so angry that he finds all the people who like shut down his company and like drowns them in condiments, like shoves like packs up their noses and like and stopping them from breathing, and like that's how he kills them. And I was like, yo, Chris, you took that a dark place, man.
Damn, that is interesting. By the way, I have actually a question since we're talking about villains and stuff like that. I had called this out months or like even half a year ago when we were talking about the Batman and stuff like that and how it could turn out and the darkness of it and everything like that. Now that we've seen the movie, do you not think that Professor Pig would work?
I always thought Professor Pig would work.
Y'all felt skeptical.
I don't like the character, but like he inherently works. To be honest, I'm interested to see how Matt Reeves is going to include Mr. Freeze.
Oh, that's gonna be so good. I
agree. I'm interested to see how he will do it.
Yeah, I mean, like I know he's like talking in a considerate way, but not like actually planning to do it. But yeah, I think there was I was watching something else, and someone had said that through the experiments, he accidentally puts him to a state where he has to keep his temperature down, right? Which would make sense, and you can make that work. Like he could be overheating instead of it being like, oh, he has to be ice because it's the only way he survives. Yeah. Like his body's constantly overheating, so he has to constantly cool himself. And we all know like you can have a heart attack if you overheat and your metabolism going too high and all that kind of stuff. But the thing that I'm curious though is like, why is he freezing his villain or his victims, right? And that's the thing that I really don't see yet, and I want to know how you connect that up. Why somebody had said something like, he has to, I guess, freeze the body parts because he's going to use them for his wife, and that could be an idea, like an organ donor type situation.
Maybe, but also at the same time, like I want them to be realistic enough. Like we don't have freeze guns unless you want to like have someone like shoot out nitrogen at someone.
Yeah, I was thinking more like, I mean, how many times can he lure somebody into a freezer? But something to the effect of like it's not really about him freezing them while they're alive. Actually, it's him freezing them when they're dead.
More if he like all he has to really do is like abduct them, kind of similar to like in Silence of the Lambs, where he like hits them, like he grabs them, puts them in a truck, and like just locks them in a freezer until they freeze to death.
Yeah,
and it's all the people who were responsible for his wife's misdiagnosis, or all like the insurance people, the company, and also like people who would not pay for her treatments. He actually could not be a very wealthy individual and just make it someone who couldn't afford the treatment, just a simple everyday thing. But he couldn't afford it because of insurance. He couldn't afford it because of benefits. He couldn't afford it because of doctors. And then just like have him kill those people.
Yeah, I think if it's something where it's like every time they find the victims and they find like body parts, it's always in a cold place, and that's where they call him Mr. Freeze. But then you would be more like he's Dexter with a freezer, and not really like he has to be stayed cold unless he's operating on himself in part of this process in some way. So,
how about you, T?
I really want to see Scarecrow. I know we already saw him in
Oh,
in
you'd
Batman
be
Begins,
terrifying.
but that's the thing.
Ooh,
I want to see. I want
hold
him
up,
to be
Umar,
like
that
the
voice.
focal.
That voice was terrifying. I like that.
I want him to be like the main focus, the main villain.
Yeah. Especially after the Arkham City game.
Yeah.
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 Like I mean, I will say that like even like so that character Scarecrow and my Mr. Camera, I was trying to not make it feel like the Riddler all over again, where it's like the control in the city. And I feel like mine still kind of does, but I feel like Scarecrow, if they did the Arkham City one, would be like a direct feeling like it's a replication of the first film. So it almost it wouldn't have to be, it would have to be a different type of thing where it doesn't feel like he's controlling the city, but something, just so it doesn't feel like it repeats.
To be honest, I really want to see Poison Ivy. Matt Reeves' Poison Ivy.
Oh,
like an environment, like an environmentalist who's like taken to the extreme. If they made Riddler terrifying in this film, I can't imagine what they can do with a Scarecrow. I completely agree, Rain. Like seriously, yeah, that would be terrifying.
Especially with some POV psychedelics.
Courtney Eggman is also stellar. He could have a sidekick called Sulfur Boy or something. Thank you for helping.
Yes, we're baking something.
Bacon and eggs.
Oh my lord. So bad.
Make him like Norman Osborn.
Make who like Norman Osborn?
He said it a while ago, so I can't remember who
who
that was a reference to.
Yeah,
but
that's interesting.
Yeah. I'd like to see them revisit some of. Obviously, I mean, if given the choice, I'd like to see some newer villains show up, but also kind of have like redemption. Hold on. But redemption for some of the previous villains that we've already seen that weren't done right. So like I feel like we got a redeemable factor in Riddler. Two-Face we did as well. But like you were saying, Poison Ivy is next, and Mr. Freeze, I think bringing them back. But yeah,
I would love to see a ventriloquist version.
I was thinking that too. Yeah. That'd be pretty freaky.
Because you could make that really fucking psychologically messed up.
Yeah. I loved that in the animated series.
He did a great job.
Especially when it was like he wasn't holding the puppet and it talked in that one scene. I was like, but what?
Yeah. And like for a kid's show, like I watched that like a couple of years ago. And I'm like, this is pretty messed up for a kid's show. And it went right over my head. Like, especially at the end when he like turns the mask over, stabs it, and then makes a scar for it. I was like,
Yeah, I definitely was thinking about that one too, but I was like, that one I feel is plausible, right? Like it wasn't like it's hard to like pull in because it's just like
do what they did.
Yeah, it's just a really it's literally do that. But yeah, I one comment there from Rain was she was guessing that and the comment, sorry, even Nudge said it himself, is that Mr. Freeze for Norman Osborn way of doing it.
Oh. Go on, Darcy. Sorry.
I was just going to say that one thing I actually realized once I read the Norman Osborn, regardless of this character or anything, I really actually want to see in this universe. And I think it would be really appropriate for a second film. So the first film is like an unknown person in the depths, right, of the hell that is Gotham, doing and terrorizing something. I actually would really like to see a character that is a Bruce Wayne level character, which is, in the elites, in the public eye, who's doing something, because then it like fundamentally, but just in the regardless of what the character is, it's just, instead of it being like you have to find the unknown man, you as the audience were watching, like, how do you reveal this other person who's also really powerful? And I think it would just make for very different writing so that we don't feel like we're getting a rehash with the same framework, the same, but just a different villain. So that's one thing that when I read the Norman Osborn, I was like, that could be really, really interesting. And then that person's in control, but not like, Penguin level control, like bigger control. And then there's a lot of other things happening at the same time. I think it just make it very fresh. That's what I like about that.
Okay. All right. Well, all right. I think I'm all done. So I'm going to volley it back to you, T.
All right. Well, this has been another edition of the Geeky Bros Podcast. I'm your boy Tactix.
Yo, it's just Darcy here.
And this is Big Geek Umar. Please like and subscribe. Thank you all for watching, and live long and prosper, y'all.
Excellent.